YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back. This upcoming Monday, just after Week 18, is Black Monday, the day we find out if teams are going to shit can their coach or maybe they'll decide to keep them. Today in this video, I'm going to go through all of the hot seat coaches plus some wild card ones, break down if I think they should be fired, should be kept, and then what I'll actually predict what I think the teams will do as well. So quite a few coaches to go over here, some obvious ones. And then some wild cards, of course, here. So excited to break it down. Full NFL coverage here. Can't wait for our playoff content. Kind of getting that off-season mode at the same time. We got a bunch of off-season content, so join us, like, subscribe, turn notifications on. Recent videos, there'll be links pinned in the comments. Check out our Twitter, very important. A lot of updates, thoughts, polls, keeping you guys involved. It's on your screen. There's also a link for that Twitter down below. Check it out. Matt Nagy. Get him out of here. Get him out of Chicago. I think they should fire him, and I think they will fire him. This should be pretty straightforward. Right before recording this, I saw that Matt Nagy said Justin Fields will start this week in Week 18, and he has not been informed of his firing yet. So could he possibly save his job? We've seen him kind of have that team catch some fire late in seasons to save his job. And they're on a 2-game win streak right now. What if they beat the Vikings Week 18? Does he save his job? I don't think so. I think this is it. This has got to be it. Going into this season, I kind of thought even if he struggled, maybe he could keep his job. Possibly because they maybe had an agreement. We got this rookie quarterback. We don't really want to play him yet. We want to play Andy Dalton, so kind of buys him some time. I thought that was more so buying Ryan Pace some time, who I think should be out as well, but I don't think will be. But Matt Nagy's got to go. He just hasn't got the job done. And his main thing is supposed to be, offensive-minded guy, play caller, and that just is where the Bears are really struggling. If your head coach specializes in a certain thing and you're really struggling in that area, that's kind of what they're known for struggling for. It's time. It's enough's enough here. It's just been underwhelming here. So I think he should be fired. I think he will be fired. I think we all expect that. There's probably only just a few people out there that thinks otherwise in either category. Next, we got Mike Zimmer. I'm in the same category at Mike Zimmer. This one a little less confident on in terms of what I'm predicting will happen. But I do think he should be fired. I still view him as a pretty good defensive coach. He's supposed to be this defensive genius. I think he is a very good defensive coach. I think he could be a very good defensive coordinator for some teams. Some team will probably pick him up, hire him as a defensive coordinator. I think he'll be a pretty good pickup, but at the same time, he's supposed to be this defensive guru guy, and the Vikings are really struggling defensively. And, on top of that, they're choking a lot of games. They got talent on their team. They're outplaying teams several times and losing those games. So I think enough's enough here. You expect more, especially when you have that talent. Now, the excuse could be, maybe had some guys injured on that defense. Things didn't really go their way. They're a little unlucky. Maybe you can say, I don't really agree with it, the unlucky part. But you can make those, you can say that. But to me, it just didn't get the job done. You have the opportunity in a lot of these games, and with the talent you had the opportunity, and you just couldn't get it done. It was very underwhelming. So, and there's other teams that are in similar situations. We talked about maybe the defense is really beat up. They had both their pass rushers out for most this year. They still top of the NFL in sacks, but just 31st in total defense, and other teams had guys injured as well, and they're still finding ways, and it's just kind of the opposite. They just couldn't find ways. They had games wrapped up. So I think he's got to go. Again, I think he could be a solid defensive coach here, and I'm starting to think, halfway through the year when they were just choking games, blowing games, I'm like, he's got to be fired after this year. And they're sticking around, and I'm thinking, maybe they actually keep him because, who else are they going to get? But I kind of get the feeling recently, they're on a couple-game losing streak here that, they may feel they have the talent, and he's just not getting the job done, kind of like I was saying. So I think Mike Zimmer should be fired for sure. Will he be fired? I can't say for sure, but I think he'll be fired after Week 18. They just announced that they'll play their starters. They're going to try to win in Week 18 here. So that surprised me maybe a little bit since it's nothing to play for. Maybe get some young guys, get some play under their belt. So who knows what's going on there. This is my prediction, though, and what I think should happen. Matt Rhule, a lot of talk. A lot of Panthers fans really want Matt Rhule gone. I think same thing for both categories here. I think that they should keep him, and I think they will keep him. And I'm not on the big Matt Rhule support line here where, yes, you must keep this guy. It's not really that. It's just I think they signed him for it to be a kind of a long-term thing. When they hired him, it wasn't a win now type atmosphere, but they kind of looked like a win now team for a little bit of both seasons, and they kind of been very underwhelming, a letdown. So I think that plays a part too. Like, I think maybe the expectations weren't that high, but all of a sudden you start winning some games early in both these seasons, and then you kind of get stabbed. It feels like it's like a big time letdown. It's like, oh, he's got to do better. They showed he can win. Like, why aren't they continuing to win? But they haven't done well with the quarterback situation. I don't know if that's more front office or more Matt Rhule. The decisions with the quarterback position have been the biggest mistakes for this team, the biggest letdown for this team. And I'm sure Matt Rhule plays a part of it, but I don't think it's all of him there. I like the way that they built the defense. I like the way Phil Snow's coaching that defense. I think he comes with Matt Rhule. I think if you bring a different staff in there, you probably got changes across the board. Matt Rhule is a very likable guy. I know for Panthers fans that expect more winning, probably not. But they got a very young team. They got to figure out the quarterback situation. They got to get healthy at running back, obviously. They got to get the offensive line sorted out. I like the way their defense is at. I still think they're in that process of building. I think people raise their expectations too high right away. I think if he struggles next year, maybe a problem. Maybe then we're going to start talking about he probably should be fired. But I think people put too much stock into the Panthers right now and then put too much stock on since they were winning in the first few games of the year. That happens a lot. First few games of the year, you can't let that kind of set expectations for you. It's a weird part of the year. Random things happen. So I think they should keep him. I'm not pounding the table like you have to keep him. Prediction, I'm very confident they keep him. I think they knew it was kind of a long-term thing. He's he sold himself there, and I think they still believe in him. They're going to use the excuse of the injuries, which sure they weren't at full strength. So yes, it's a legitimate excuse, but a lot of teams found a way to get the job done, or a lot of teams didn't as well when they were borderline depleted. So I think they'll make excuses for him, and I'm not totally against that. So I really, really would be surprised if he was fired. I know a lot of Panthers fans are pounding the table, fire him, and maybe they think he will. Not only should, but maybe they think he will. I would be surprised if he was. I'd be surprised. I think it's starting this process over again, trying to find somebody else, and it could end up being the same result. And then is that guy going to bring in a whole new staff? I know they like their defensive the side of things there, so I would be surprised. I think they keep Matt Rhule here. Joe Judge, this is the first one we're a little split on what I think they should do and what they will do. The Giants head coach, I think they should fire him. I think, it's still a little bit of a project there, and they were pretty damn beat up. They were one of the more beat-up teams in the NFL this year, but I still think they have talent. Their defense put them in position to win games, and at the same time, is Joe Judge it's kind of a question. Is he losing the locker room? I guess it's kind of a question. Then making some interesting comments as well. People accusing him of lying. I'm not going to make a comment on that, but lying about things. But it seems like a mess, and it's just the question of, is he losing the locker room? We've seen some takes from players in the past, or even back to training camp. Maybe not the most ideal atmosphere that he's built there. So I think since it's a bit of a messy situation. And he hasn't really proven that he can be a head coach, that leader of the team, and kind of adjust things. 'Cause remember, he brought in Jason Garrett too. He brought him in. Decided that didn't work out. It's still a mess after that. Just doesn't really feel like he can take control of things and change things for the better. And I still think there was talent on that team. I think Patrick Graham, I think he does a good job coaching that defense. They have some studs on defense, and that defense puts them in position to win games, and they can't find ways to pull it off. And sure, we can blame more of the offensive players, quarterback play, offensive line, coaching more, but I think Joe Judge, he's responsible. He's the head coach. So I think, it being a bit messy, it's not really a good look atmosphere there. I think they should fire him. I think they're going to keep him, though. We heard that about halfway through the year, that they're probably going to keep Joe Judge. I think things have changed, though. I think I'm not saying for sure they keep him. I would not be surprised if he's fired. It's kind of like the last guy we talked about, Matt Rhule. There's been some talk about it. I'd be surprised, though, if he's fired. This one, I wouldn't be surprised either way. It's one of those. They said they want to keep him. They wanted to play this out, but now things are changing. Just don't really like the way he's talking. Maybe there's questions on if he lost the players. I don't know. Just not finding ways when they feel like. I mean, look at the way, and I think Gettleman's going to be gone, but they actually found some talent. Gettleman that has made some bad decisions, but they went out and spent a lot of money, and they're actually in the negative for this next year cap-wise, and that means they spent a lot of money, and they got some big-time players, and they did make some mistakes, spending too much money, giving out some bad contracts, but they went and found some players, and Joe Judge couldn't get it done. So I guess the Gettleman and Judge are almost connected, not where if one's fired, the other one's fired, maybe. But if they decide to keep, I think Gettleman's gone. It really sounds like he is. But if they decide to keep Gettleman, I think Gettleman can be like, hey, I spent big money. I got these good players. You didn't get the job done. You get your ass out of here. I'm shit canning you, So it could be one of those situations too. It's an interesting one, though. I definitely think he should be fired. I think I've seen enough here. It just doesn't feel right, I'd be okay elevating Patrick Graham, really. For the Giants, but I think they keep him. But if I would have done this video about 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks ago, in that range, I'd say they're definitely keeping him. Now I'm saying that lightly a little bit here with the keep, but that's my prediction. Definitely interesting. Next up, Vic Fangio. I think this might be a little bit of a tough one, but I think he should be. It's tough on my should part. Somewhat tough. I think he should be fired. I think he will be fired. I'm kind of hearing that they're kind of preparing to search for that next guy, but it's a little tough. I mean, Vic Fangio is an old school defensive-minded guy, defensive guru. We talked about Mike Zimmer. Mike Zimmer's that defensive guy. I think he's going to be a good defensive coordinator if he's fired somewhere. But at the same time, Vikings defense wasn't getting the job done, really. They were ranked 31st in total defense. Vic Fangio, on the other hand, he's getting the job done defensively. I mean, that defense is balling. You look out throughout the year, he's getting guys playing better and better. They got injuries to the inside linebacker position. They go scoop up Kenny Young. He's got these young guys playing better. I mean, even not the young guy, everybody playing better. They trade Von Miller. They're playing better. They're missing Bradley Chubb. I keep saying it, but they're actually playing better defense. I think he's got the right scheme for a guy like Justin Simmons. In a great example of that, actually, and this is me kind of talking up Vic Fangio here. Remember, he was with the Bears. Bears had and you can look at it that way, too. The Bears had an elite defense. He leaves. Still a solid defense, but you see it goes downhill a little bit. Could have been a coincidence, but the Broncos get a lot better defensively. But I look at it specifically, a guy like Eddie Jackson when he was with the Bears. Single eye with the Bears. Single eye free safety, big-time playmaker. Maybe was the best safety in football one of those years. And then it just started going downhill. And I really think it's how they used him. It's how they changed how they use him. And Vic Fangio comes in, and the way he uses Justin Simmons is the same way he used Eddie Jackson. I think Justin Simmons is the better safety, free safety, but he used them the same way. So my point is he knows how to get the most out of these players. He's a great defensive coach. Is the next guy coming in, is it going to be the same? Are they going to tear it down? They're going to keep Justin Simmons, guys like that. But, what I do like is a guy like Bradley Chubb, coming in the NFL, we thought he'd be a 4-3 defensive end. They make it work with a 3-4 outside linebacker. Basically, he's versatile enough. So if they want to go 4-3, he can play. I'm fine with guys like that with pretty much any coach. But that's kind of maybe why I would argue keep Vic Fangio is because he's a very good defensive mind. Does this defense take a hit? He's using these players the right way. So that's kind of the problem here. But just, again, I think they have talent. I think they have talent, and they just couldn't find ways to win. Maybe it falls a little more on the quarterback situation and the offensive play calling. But and there were some comments during the year. I want to say Draymond Jones made a comment kind of, I forget what the exact quote was, but it wasn't too long ago. It was just kind of taking a shot at the coaching staff. So maybe he's losing the question mark, maybe losing the locker room a little bit. Again, one of those where it doesn't feel like the best atmosphere. So that's where I end up at the end of the day with probably should fire him, but then does the defense take a hit here? And it could be an appealing spot for maybe a better coach anyways. I think they're going to fire him. I think they do that. They bring in George Payton last year. So bringing a new GM and not getting the job done, it's probably not too hard for him to move on from a guy because he just came in fresh, last year, heading into this year, really. So, we kind of heard some rumors. I'm not a guy to believe the rumors, but start to hear a little bit. They're expecting to start their search for a new coach Monday, right after Week 18. So I feel better about my prediction than what I think they should, in my opinion, what they should do. But it does make sense. It's just kind of, does the defense take a hit losing Vic Fangio? I'd say most likely yes. I'd actually say so. That's kind of the tough part there. So we'll see who they hire. If they bring in an offensive guy, defensive guy, who they bring in for the coordinators. Next up, David Culley, pretty straightforward one. The Texans coach they just hired this year. People have been talking about it. Do they, because they had a bad year, do they fire him? Most people understand this is pretty straightforward. They should keep him. They will keep him. They knew what they were getting into this year. They're pretty much in that stage one of the rebuild process entering this year. So there was no expectations. Unless they just, hey, we're gonna get a bridge coach, which has that happened before? I think it's pretty rare. Kind of like bridge quarterback. We're gonna get this guy for now. He's kind of a small name guy, not a big name coach. Gonna get him for now. We'll see if we really, really like him. Because why would you do that? Because we think a bigger name might pop up, now, and we might be able to get that guy. I don't think that's the case. But if they were to fire him, it wouldn't be. I don't think it would be because of the lack of wins this year, because that was expected. I would 100%. I'd be convinced in my mind that it'd be because they had a plan the whole time. They wanted a bridge coach, and they had somebody else in mind that may pop up. Now they got their guy. Somebody became more appealing to them. If it happens, I would be shocked, but that would be my thought there. So they're going to keep him. I really think they're going to keep him here. It shouldn't really be too much of a surprise. They're in that rebuild process. But they showed they can win some interesting, some surprising games this year. So maybe they can turn this thing around faster than we would expect. Maybe they can go from that stage one of the rebuild and just jump, a couple state levels there. If you kind of understand what I'm saying, it's possible. It's possible. Another one, Dan Campbell. Nobody's really talking about Dan Campbell. I kind of mentioned throughout the year that I wasn't a fan of his coaching on the field, what he's done. I think the coaching single-handedly lost him quite a few games. I think there was some games that the players played well enough to win, maybe up to, I would say 4, maybe up to 5 games around that range. And I thought single-handedly the coaching kind of cost them. So I was not thrilled with the coaching on the field for the most part, not every game. I mean, one example with that Bears game on Thanksgiving, that was some of the worst coaching in game that I've seen. Situational things, pretty bad. And I start to question. I question it. Where is his coaching abilities? But I still say keep. I think it's some things he can grow on, he can learn upon. But there are positive things. It's still in the back of my mind, though. I'm still going to be questioning it. Can he coach? Can he coach? If people have the excuse they didn't have the best talent, they didn't have the best talent. But there were some situations throughout the entire year where it didn't matter about the talent or not. They had teams outplayed. So that's going to be in the back of my mind. Even if I think he can grow, learn from the mistakes. But the good things here, I think he's a good leader. I think he can prepare a team correctly. And I think he understands talent. That's a big one. I know the front office gathers the talent. I know the head coach always has a say. I love that draft class the Lions put together. I really like that draft class and kind of what they're bringing in. I think they know their identity. Patricia, I don't think he knew. He kind of got guys that were the most versatile and not just the best players. So I do like that part of Dan Campbell here. So I do, even though I ripped him a little bit and I'm a little concerned about his situational coaching, I do think they should definitely keep him, and they will keep him. I think that's pretty straightforward. Wasn't a question. They're going to keep him for the long haul here. They like him for that organization, so they're definitely going to keep him. Kevin Stefanski kind of getting brought up a lot, especially after these last couple weeks. The Browns underwhelming, not making the playoffs. Him kind of going away from what's working. Him keeping Nick Chubb on the sideline. Just the offense struggling in general. While we all felt like their roster actually might be better this year, mainly because their defense put them in position to win, which wasn't the case really last year, and he couldn't get the job done. So his name kind of maybe a little bit of a wild card here, but since he's being brought up by fans, I didn't really view it as that much of a wild card. It's crazy because last year it's kind of he's almost like a god around in Cleveland. Like, man, what a hire that was, and it's just. It's almost like he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. And then now everyone, not everyone, but a lot of people hate him. They don't like him. They don't want, people, I've seen fans say they should fire him, maybe getting a little carried away there, but you remember when the Browns hired him, I wasn't in love with the hiring. I wasn't thrilled about his play calling in crucial situations in Minnesota, but sometimes I did like it. I didn't hate the hiring. I didn't love the hiring. And last year it kind of looked like I was wrong. I should have loved it, but now this year it's kind of like I was still wrong. He might be worse than I thought. It's just still to be determined to me. And they should keep him. I mean, he turned that Browns team around, helped turn that Browns team around last year. The problem is, I think the difference is our team's kind of game planning for him now, able to game plan. They saw what happened last year. That's what happens a lot. Matt Nagy won Coach of the Year. Kevin Stefanski won Coach of the Year. And all of a sudden you kind of get figured out. Things just don't stay the same, and people forget that all the time. But, what I don't like about, and people specifically look at, keeping Nick Chubb, maybe Nick Chubb's not 100%. I'm just, but keeping him on the sideline, kind of going. I don't like going away from what's working. Look at the Packers game 2 weeks ago. Maybe outsmarting himself, but I think he understands we have to throw to win ball games. I do think they needed better receivers in there. Baker Mayfield needs to play better, needs to get healthier. What I don't like, I'm not a big fan of that system, though. It's kind of like, West Coast type of system. It's kind of like the play caller thinks he is the system rather than the quarterback, if that makes sense. I think those types of systems never have the best quarterback. In them, look at Minnesota, and Kirk Cousins is playing fine, but, look at San Francisco, Jimmy Garoppolo, and they went and got Trey Lance now. But, and I think that's their thought process is in that system, the quarterback doesn't win championships. It's offensive lines, it's the running game, it's other things, it's themselves. They think that it's more of we don't need the best coach we don't need the best quarterback because I'm gonna run things. It's kind of hard to explain how I think about that, but I think other teams is let's get the best quarterback in here, and he's the system. What's running around that, and I think these systems kind of just revolve around the play callers. It's on the play callers. The play calling has to be flawless in these systems. That's my take on it, and that's the thing I don't like about guys like Stefanski in those systems. You talk about it. Deshaun Watson's been on the block, obviously, and some more teams can get involved in that conversation in this offseason. Aaron Rodgers maybe. And what if the Browns were to need a quarterback? Some people think so. And I'm starting to think, maybe they would be involved in those guys, but, I don't know if that system and that coach would want that quarterback to take over and be the system and kind of be the coach. I think it's that type of system where it's like, let's focus on everything else but the quarterback. So I don't know if I really agree with that. But I think he helped turn around with the Browns last year. I think they can get healthier here, with Baker, with the offensive line, Nick Chubb. I don't think he's 100%. I think that might be the problem there. So I do think they should keep him, and I definitely think I would be shocked if they didn't keep him here. So we definitely wanted to talk about a guy like that. Wild card here, Ron Rivera. Maybe I'll take a little bit of bashing for this one. It's a tough one because Ron Rivera is a very likable guy. I like Ron Rivera. He's a very good coach. He has been a very good coach. I'm on the fence. I'm not pounding the table. This man should be fired. Definitely not even close to that. I'm on the fence here. I'm not a fan of what happened in Washington, this year. I had a lot more expectations, and maybe I kind of look back and look at their roster and be like, should I have this many expectations? I know Fitzpatrick is better than Heineken. He was supposed to be the guy, but McLaurin have to carry in the receiver group, kind of getting doubled because the rest of the receiver group can't do much. But the offensive line was solid, especially run blocking. Their running backs were good. I know they were hurt later in the year. But maybe the quarterback position. But I had more expectations here. But mainly looking at the defensive side, I thought they built this defense. I thought they had a very, very talented defense. At the end of last year, it looked like, okay, this thing's for real. It's coming. This is gonna. And I thought this was going to be an elite defense this year. I thought this would be the very, very best defense in football. And they had the talent across the board. They had Chase Young, supposed to be that next elite pass rusher. They built this thing. I fully expected this to be the best defense in football, and it really wasn't even close. It struggled early portion of the year where they were losing, and it felt like, okay, this team's not contending for the playoffs. And then they kind of figured it out a little bit. They did get better. They were still nowhere near where I thought they should be. The weird thing that I don't like is Chase Young got hurt, and they were better. And I don't think it was because Chase Young. I think it's a great player, but he wasn't playing too well as it was. So why aren't we getting the most out of our talented players? Why are they not getting the most out of them? Why all of a sudden are they slightly getting better, maybe more than slightly? Another big problem is Jamin Davis. They draft Jamin Davis that was maybe a little bit of a surprise, not really. Maybe the last week heading the draft, but if we would have said they were going to take Jamin Davis before that, I would have been like, what are you talking about? But they took Jamin Davis because he was a one-year wonder type of guy. That's fine. That happens a lot. These guys figure it out. The teams figure out how the guy should be played. He's a freaky specimen, a freak athlete, getting a lot better, fits today's NFL. But they didn't really know how to use him. And you see comments from Ron Rivera. You even see them, I think, like last week. Like, we're still trying to figure out, like, I think I have an idea for him. I think I have a role for him. We're going to try him with this type of role. And Landon Collins, he made comments on him, like he should be a linebacker. Meanwhile, they're playing him at safety. I think he actually had a pretty good year playing his normal role. It just seems messy to me. Like, you draft a guy like Jamin Davis, you should know what he's doing. Kentucky figured out the last year. You should kind of know. Little things like that on top of the defense should be a lot better. It's very underwhelming. And then you guys got guys like Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne, your key pieces on your defensive line, fighting with each other. What's going on there? That doesn't all fall on Ron Rivera, of course, but there's a lot of things that kind of add up to me. And then on to the biggest one. I didn't even get to the biggest one yet. The biggest one is Washington. When they started getting going a little bit, and they were finding ways to just outplay their opponent, and that's great. That's good. They were outplaying their opponent through most of the game, and a big thing for coaches, number one thing going into games, win the time of possession. Every coach will tell you that. We want to win. Number one thing we want to do, we don't want to have our quarterback throw for X amount of yards. We don't want to have our pass rusher get X amount of sacks. We want to win the time of possession. And they were dominating. At one point, they were number one in the NFL, dominating time of possession. But they were letting teams get kind of back in the game and then kind of blowing the games as well. Even games they won, they kind of blew them and barely won, and I kind of knew it was coming. Like, they're going to start losing these games. We seen it against the Eagles last week. They had a 16-point lead. They had 16 points in the first half right away pretty much, and that's just not good. You're kind of blowing games here. So there's a lot of things that stack up. Like, I think he's a good coach. I think he's a good leader. Some things will say otherwise actually this year. So that's why I'm kind of leaning towards they're not going to do it though. They're not going to do. They're going to keep him, and it's not like they're stupid. They should have fired him. I'm not nowhere near there. If they keep him, I'm not going to rip Washington. Just go out and just do things right in the offseason, build the team better, then get it better, try to find a quarterback. Maybe they go out and contend for Deshaun Watson here. Maybe they don't want to put up with that. I don't know. So still going to be positivity from me. But a lot of those things I talked about, they kind of add up, and maybe some people can understand what I'm saying here. So I thought that was a bit of a wild card. Sometimes it was like, wow, they fired that guy like that. We were thinking Nagy, Zimmer, Fangio. And, sometimes that happens. I don't know if I'm really expecting it this year, so I try to throw some wild cards out here. There's another one, Pete Carroll. And this is a tough one. So you hate to talk about it, but you start to talk about there's a point where you talk about it, is the guy kind of getting too old? Is he getting too old? Same way we talk about players. Is he kind of getting too old is he declining a little bit? Maybe it's the same thing here for coaches. Was he 70 years old? So, yeah, it's kind of where you think about it. Maybe it's kind of getting there. And kind of it's weird. Kind of not knowing their own identity has kind of been a problem. Like, are we a run-first team? Are we all out pass attack? And just rapidly switching throughout last year, this year, just rapidly switching and not being able to kind of figure things out until it's too late. Those things don't sit well with me. But, Russell Wilson got hurt. He had a pin taken out of his finger. He came back a little too early, struggled a little bit. It's whatever. Chris Carson got hurt. It's really hard for them to grasp their own identity, but they struggle a little bit there. And it's tough. That's kind of the tough part. But there's some legitimate excuses. I still think Pete Carroll's a great mind, great coach, good leader. There's some people that really think they're going to blow. I keep hearing that Seattle's about to blow it up. They're about to see a lot of change. That's what I keep hearing. We're going to see a lot of changes in Seattle this offseason. And I don't exactly know what that means. Kind of get an idea. Are they talking more so roster? Are they going to trade guys? They're going to try to bring in a bunch of new players. They're going to try to regather draft picks, reacquire those draft picks. But does that mean coaching staff? Are they done with Pete Carroll? Or are they, Waldron, was that a one and done there? The offensive coordinator they got, It could mean multiple different things. So I'm curious to see what that means. I'm curious to see if, because last week they scored 51 on the Lions. It felt like they figured something out offensively. Will they say, all right, this is what we got to do. Maybe we're preparing ourselves for next year. Maybe some people don't want to hear that. If that's the case, it may not be the case. I wouldn't be upset if they fired him. I think they should keep him, though. I actually think, which Pete Carroll plays a part from it, I think they're extra conservative when it comes to these off seasons, these last several years. I think they're kind of sitting back and letting everything happen. And some years they were a little a little low on the cap space. Some years they were not. I'm not a big fan what the front office has done, actually. That's more so. And Pete Carroll definitely has a big say in that. So I guess we don't know how much of a say does he have, and we can make a very good educated guess, but I'm more disappointed in what they did. I'll plain and simple. I don't think the roster's been good. It kind of makes sense they didn't make the playoffs. They got star players. Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Bobby Wagner, of course. Jamal Adams can be. They have those players. And I think Chris Carson's extremely underrated, but he's got to be on the field. But they're kind of patchy. They're kind of patchy. I think they've been very too conservative when it comes to the offseason. And this offseason, they have cap space. They have big cap space. They did about 2 years ago, and they were conservative. They got to go in. They got to go in this offseason if they're trying to win. Or maybe they blow the thing up. I think they should keep him. I think they will keep him. But I keep hearing the big changes coming. I think those are more guesses, but from some credible people. But what does that mean? You can keep Pete Carroll and have some big changes. You can keep your players and have some big changes maybe in the staff. So be interesting to see what happens there. And then one more, it's a little different. It's kind of like hire or replace because he's interim coach, and that's Rich Bisaccia here from the Raiders. It's a tough one. This is actually a tough one because we're in Week 18 here. Maybe I should making a comment after Week 18 because we're in Week 18. They play on Sunday Night Football home against the Chargers. If they win, they're in the playoffs. There are some weird scenarios where if they both teams can make playoffs, Chargers and Raiders. We went over the scenarios, but it's pretty much winning in. You got to go win this game. And why it's a tricky one is if they win and get in the playoffs, maybe they should keep them. Maybe they will keep them. I could change my mind on that because the Raiders, it's one of those big-time organizations worldwide. Everyone knows the Las Vegas Raiders. So many fans, so many expectations, so much expectations, and they continue to be a letdown. They continue to let us down in the second half of the year, just not be able to clutch up, not be able to make those playoffs, and they had a little bit of a disaster this year with the Gruden situation, Ruggs situation, and they went downhill, in the second half. But now are they digging themselves out? Well, a little bit of a win streak. They clutch up, win a clutch game against Indianapolis Colts. And even though that game was close, I thought they outplayed them for all of that game, most of that game. It really shouldn't have been that close. But they were prepared for that game. Let's say they go and beat the Chargers here in this high-pressure game, the games that the Raiders have not been able to handle in the second half of the season, and they make the playoffs. It's like, this is what we've been trying to do, and we found a guy that got us here, actually. Was it all him? I know he struggled in the second half of the year a little bit, but do you move on from that guy and kind of start from square one again when you got the guy, he got us here where we wanted to go? We couldn't do this, so that's tough. That is tough. If they lose that game, then he couldn't get the job done, so it's kind of like, it's a big game. It's a big game, but even if they win, I can change my mind on if they should or not. I think they're ready to move on from him, though. They're a splash type of team. They want to make that big hire. They want to get that guy that they feel great about. And again, I could see them change their mind if they make the playoffs. Maybe it would go into we wouldn't hear anything until they're eliminated. But if they got the playoffs and they won a playoff game, let's go that far. They won a playoff game. I'm leaning towards they probably keep him. They hire him as their full-time coach here, if they won a playoff game, because that's what you want right there. That's what you're trying to get. And they probably didn't think there was any way that was happening. What was going on with the team, the mess, and they're starting to lose like crazy. So we'll see there. But yeah, the second half wasn't. They weren't under control there. They were losing. They were a little bit of a letdown. They felt like they can be better. And then you have that Cowboys game was at Thanksgiving, and it's like, where is that? That's a good win, but it's like, man, you're capable of doing this against a great team. Go and do it. So that could be a reason why maybe go someone else. Another thing, teams that didn't have a firm head coach were actually new rule. They were able to start to interview their next coach or coach candidates, and the Jaguars were doing that. And everyone's like, why aren't the Raiders doing it? Why aren't the Raiders doing it? It made no sense if the Raiders were going to do it. They were still fighting for the playoffs. It made sense to me that it made no sense that if they were to, I should say, I think they did the right thing. Obviously, they're still trying to contend for the playoffs. That'd be a distraction. So people were asking that. So it confused me that people were asking that. They did the right thing by not going to interview guys. So I think people kind of made judgment, they're keeping them. Not necessarily, But the Raiders always go for those splash signings. Just yesterday, we hear that Harbaugh may be leaving Michigan to come to the NFL, and why it's being said by credible people. It's being said because people at Michigan feel that way, people in the NFL feel that way, and it kind of feels like he's drawing some interest from NFL teams. So that is very interesting, and I see the fit there with the Raiders. I see the fit. I mean, I could see Raiders, I could see Bears, I could see maybe Jaguars, maybe Broncos. But I look at the Raiders and the Bears at the top for Harbaugh, and that's that splash sign. The Raiders, they want that guy that's a leader that he doesn't take no shit. He can control this team that needs some controlling a little bit. Being in Vegas and having some. For some reason, they got the troublemakers. They always get the troublemakers there. Does it have something to do with them in Vegas? I don't know. But Harbaugh kind of taking control. And Harbaugh knows talent, too. There's been some questions on executing on the field in the game. That's where the questions are. There's some questions because he is kind of old school. I like the old school mentality, how you lead teams. But the old school offenses and defenses don't really work anymore. So that's kind of my problem. It's not an end of the world problem, but I kind of feel that they might be the team for Harbaugh here. And it's that splash signing, and I could almost see them having that lined up already. I can almost maybe the Bears too. Two giant organizations, crazy big franchises in football, Raiders and Bears. I can see that. So that's kind of my prediction there. But that's all the guys want to talk about. Maybe there could be some other random wild card. Once in a while there's those like, wow, I was not expecting that. Or maybe somebody steps down. Maybe somebody's like, I'm not really feeling it anymore, and they step down, So who knows? We'll have you covered. Black Monday is usually when it all goes down. That's right after these weekend's games. And we have playoff content coming because the playoffs are starting. I cannot wait for that content. We'll have our picks, full playoff predictions. Well, I'm going to rank the playoff teams, how every team can win the Super Bowl, maybe why they can't. I love doing those videos. So I hope you guys join us for all that. Join us on Twitter because all this talk happens first on Twitter. Keeping you guys involved. You're really missing out if you're not following that Twitter. There's a link down below for that along with recent videos. So if you can join us, that'd be awesome. I appreciate everyone's support recently. But that's going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.